Welcome back, you guys. So this little lesson on page 165 will be on how to give dates. It could be for birth dates, it could be for holiday dates, like when's Christmas type thing, or just like what's today's date, but it's about dates. There's quite a lot of different information going on here, so kind of bear with me as we go through this, but we have a couple of questions. We have our months that we're going to be going through. You have numbers because you need numbers depending on like what year you might be talking about. And then we already went over step parents in our last video, but then the difference between the birth date, as in DATE, and the birthday, like cumpleaños. So we have a couple of things going. So let's get right into it. First, we have a couple of questions in blue up at the top. So it's still Rodrigo, it's still him talking about his family and birthdays, in this case his birthday that's coming up that in April, that he's holding up in like the calendar. He asks, ¿Cuál es la fecha? That's your first question right up here. That literally just asks, what is the date? If it's for a specific occasion, right, you could say like after a party or whatever, you could ask someone, what is the birth date? Or what is today's date? Or what is the date of the test? Or whatever you need. But ¿cuál es la fecha? Is just the basic, what's the date question. So he kind of asks it and then answers it on his own. He asks, what's the date? ¿Cuál es la fecha? Hoy, which means today. Hoy es el, today is the primero, this is a new word right here, primero, de abril. And abril, as you can see, is this calendar, so you can probably guess the month that he's talking about. Two things to kind of know about this. First is this word primero is a new word. It means first. Just because when you talk about, like if you were to say this date, April, and there's a 1 here, you don't necessarily say it is April 1. I mean, you could, people would understand you, but it sounds a little odd. Instead, you tend to say April 1st. Same thing here. We don't really say uno. We don't say 1 of April. We say it's the 1st of April. The second thing you want to know is that we, in English, tend to put the month before we put the date. April 1st, right? It's also April Fool's Day, but it's like April 1st. That's how you would tend to say the date. We do say like the 1st of April, the 2nd of April, the 3rd of April. You can do that for a few, but then you wouldn't say like, or you're used to saying, especially when you write it, I should say, April and then the number after it. So like April 13th or April 21st or whatever number it could be. We tend to do that. In most countries, outside of the US, because we like to be special and we tend to have things that only work for us, you will never have the month first. You instead always have the day first. So no matter where kind of in the world that you might go to, if you were to just see the numbers spelled out, like for example April 1st, we would spell it as 4/1/ I don't know, 2000 or whatever year he was born in. But in most other places of the world, they would say the number first and they would say 1/4/2000 or whatever year he was born. So those are two things you want to remember. You always put the number before the month when you're doing dates in Spanish and in most other places of the world. And then you don't really say the word 1 for your dates. Instead, you say first, which is just exactly what he did here. So keep those two things in mind. So he says, today is the 1st of April. Es mi, it's my cumpleaños. It's my birthday. That's why he's excited and holding up his calendar in front of the cake that you see and all the presents in front of us. So then he asks, ¿Cuándo es tu cumpleaños? When is your birthday? We have two ways of saying, or asking the question, I guess you could say, about a birthday, depending on the information you want to have. Birthday is cumpleaños, the way you have it here, CUMPLEAN with a squiggle, OS. That means that I want to know the day and the month of your birthday. Like, when do you celebrate? Mine, June 29. That would be my birthday. However, I'm going to scroll to the bottom here. If we had this phrase, la fecha de nacimiento, that's the birth date, DATE. That asks for different information. Birth date would include your day, your month, but also your year. So it's like the specific time, well, not the time, not like 2:30 in the morning, the specific day that you were born. So if someone asks you for la fecha de nacimiento, you have to also mention your year. Like if it's for like a document or something like that, they don't just want to know if you're born in June or on the 29th. They want to know the year you were born in as well. So something to keep in mind. Then we kind of hit our months here. The good thing is that most of the months, you can kind of see as the list goes down, they are in order, by the way, as well. Most of the months look like they do in English, which hopefully will make your definition or you remembering what they mean a bit easier. Up at the top, it just says los meses, or the months. Multiple months, because we have 12, right? So that's why it says ES at the end, and that's why it's LOS. If it was just 1 month, then I would say el instead of LOS, and mes, MES. So the months are in the same orders. Enero for January, febrero for February, marzo for March, abril for April, which is what he had in his little hand up here in the picture. Then you have mayo for May. Don't pronounce it as mayo. It's not the mayonnaise. It's just mayo. Junio for June. Julio for July. Agosto for August. Septiembre for September. Octubre for October. Noviembre for November. And diciembre for December. So luckily, they do kind of look like the words that we are used to seeing in English, all except enero, January. That'll be our outlier, the one that you want to remember kind of on its own, just because it doesn't necessarily look like the word for January. Okay. The last part is probably the one that takes the most thinking. Here we have a bunch of numbers. We've done numbers about 2 more times before this. We've done the 0 through 10, and then we learned 11 through 100. Now we're here from 200 to actually a million. And of course, this is probably the least amount of numbers that we have taken notes on. It's a little bit of words that they've given us. And that's because, you probably remember, numbers like patterns. Once you have the pattern, you can kind of make the number that you need just by following the same steps. So, they gave you all the hundreds, like 200, 300, 400, because those are the ones with the most changes in them. Not even a lot of changes, but a couple. The words for multiple thousands, like if it's 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, or if it's 2 million, 3 million, 4 million, are not going to be as difficult. So, first things, you probably see that the 200 has the word for 2, dos. The word 300 has the word for 3, tres. 4 has cuatro. So, most of these numbers, if it's a 200 versus a 300 versus a 400, are going to have that number in front. Second thing is it also has the word for 100. If you remember when we learned the word 100, it was cien. C-I-E-N, which I can see here. Cien, cien, cien. It's going to be in the number as well. The last thing is that now we have TOS or TAS at the end of it for every single one, except of course the thousands and the millions, all the hundreds. The difference is, because you have this ending now, TOS or TAS after the word for 100, depending as to what you're talking about, if you have, if the school bought 200 new Chromebooks for everyone since we're doing distance learning, they would have to match the spelling of the number with the thing that they're talking about. So, computadora, that's computer, right? So if the school bought 200 new computers to give out, they would say 200, because computadora, with an A, has an A. 200, we have 200 new computers, right? If the school had bought 200 new books that we had to give out to students, the word for book is libro, with an O. If they had 200 books, they would say 200 libros, because they both have O's. So the same thing would happen to the rest of these. Depending as to what you're talking about, you match your spelling with the thing that you're mentioning. So, we don't know this word yet. We haven't done the shopping unit, but dólares is a word for dollars. It doesn't have an A at the end. That means it's going to be considered masculine, right? O's or E's are used as masculine. So, if I had $200, I'd say $200, 200 bucks. So, this is kind of the first thing that we know about these hundreds. They will be changing spellings. All of the other numbers that we had, for example, mil or millón, we're not going to be changing spellings, only for the hundreds. Same with when we had 70, 80s, 14, 3, none of those change spellings either. Only this little set right here. The other thing, like I said, is that they tend to have the number up at the front. 200, 300, 4 for 4, cientos. But look at number 5. If we were following the pattern the way it was supposed to be, that should have been 500. but that's not the case. This is the one, just like January, the one thing that doesn't follow the pattern. This is the one number that also does not follow that pattern. Instead of saying cinco, it says quin, Q-U-I-N. It's not the word for 5. It kind of reminds you of a number that had a 5, maybe, like the word quince, 15. They have the spelling or the intro to the spelling for quince, quin. They also, if you can see, don't have the word 100. Cientos is C-I-E-N. They just put I-E-N. So, a little bit of a different spelling there too. This is going to be the one, in my opinion, more difficult number to remember because it breaks those rules. Quin instead of cinco, y entos instead of cientos. Then, of course, like usual, you change your spelling depending as to what you count. Then you're back to the normal pattern. Seis for 6, seiscientos. Sete, you're actually missing the letter I here. Siete cientos. It's supposed to be with an I, but of course it breaks the pattern a little bit, so it's sete instead. But it's still supposed to be 7, so it's not a typo. That is how it's spelled, but the original spelling from the letter or from the number 7 is a little bit different. So setecientos for 700, ochocientos for 800, perfectly normal. Novecientos, again, a small change. Usually you say nueve, N-U-E-V. Now it's N-O-V, so it's a little different. But still for 9, novecientos. So similar to the hundreds, the millions are going to have the number that you're using, like if it's 2,000, 3,000, 7,000, in front of the word thousand, which is mil. So if it's 1,000, I just say mil. If it's 2,000, I say 2,000. 3,000, I say 3,000. 4,000, 4,000, right? If it's 35,000, I would say 35,000. It's always whatever number you need. Same thing for the millions. If it's $1 million, $1 million, I wish that I had. If it's 1 million, I say un millón. Because I'm not saying it's 1 million, I'm saying it's a million. The word for a is un, or una if it's feminine, but we're not doing feminine, it's just un on its own. So un millón would be a million. 2 million would be dos millones. We put the es at the end here just because it is more than 1 million that you have now. The only one that doesn't have that spelling change for more than 1 is the thousands. I wish I could tell you there was a reason for. It's just thousands don't need to be changed in spelling at all. It's just you put the number that you need in front of it, keep mil no matter what. Here you do put es at the end. So if I had 2 million, I would say 2 millones. If I had 3 million, I'd say 3 millones, es at the end. But no matter what amount of millions you had, right? If you have 10 million something, I would say 10, D-I-E-Z, millones, as is. So using these numbers, it's important to kind of know all of these hundreds and thousands because when it comes to telling the dates of things, you use them in crafting your answers, basically. And I will show you guys that on the PowerPoint right now. So, for our dates, like I said, here on our PowerPoint, we went over this in class as well. I showed you guys this slide. Quick reminder, right? If you're talking about a date, you are always going to use this like sentence frame because you always say the day before you say the month. And then if you actually need to give the year for something, like if I ask you guys what day is like our graduation day or something, then you of course want to tell me the year as well. So it's always going to be es el, it's the, and then whatever number day it is. For example, ocho, if whatever day it could be. The 8th de junio, maybe June 8th del año, and then whatever year you're supposed to graduate. So to say the year, it's helpful to think of it as like a numbers place, kind of like what you have down here. It says to say the year, you have a thousands, a hundreds, a tenths, and a ones. So we've used number places before when we learned at, when we talked about the basically 16 through 99 numbers. So if it was like 42, you would say 40 and 2, like 40 y 2. Same thing here, except now instead of just using 2 of them, you have 4. So the way that this works is, we'll start with the year 2021, just because that's an easy one that we are in right now. If you wanted to say 2021, we tend to say sometimes 2021, or you might actually say 2021. It just depends on like your preference, right? In Spanish, there isn't an option. You always have to say 2021. Like you don't think of it as a special year. You just say whatever number you see in front of you. So if you were saying 2021, that would make sense in English. In Spanish, it wouldn't work that way. And in this case, because you have a 0 here, it makes it even easier to say because you're talking about the thousands place, right? So what number from 2021 would be in the thousands? It would be the 2. What do we have in the hundreds? Technically nothing. It's just a 0. So I'll put it there just to show you guys it's like a placeholder. What number do we have in the tens? A 20. Or 21 specifically, but the tens is just 20. And then what's in the ones? A 1. Let me scooch that under there again. So the way you would say it is, and I'll type it down here again, you will have to say the word for 2,000, right? Because we have 2 of them. So your answer, let me make this a different color for you guys too, would be 2,000, 2,000. We have nothing in the hundreds, so just kind of walk by it. You don't have to say anything there. And then you're on to the 20s. 20, because that's how you say 20. And then uno being the ones place, right? 21. So because the 21 is one of those special numbers, I'll stick it in the middle, that doesn't need like a space between it, that's the way it looks. However, if it was a number that did need a space, you would have to leave that space as well. So for example, if it was, I know it's not that this year right now, but if, for example, we were looking at the year 1992, that's my birthday. This is going to be one of the harder years to have to write because you do have a space, or you don't have any space holders. Each section needs to have a number, right? So now, what's my thousand? Or let me delete our answer down here too. But now instead of having 2,000, we, in English, tend to say it as 1992. We go half and half, right? But that won't exist in Spanish. You have to say 1,992. So what's my thousands place? 1. What's my hundreds place? 9 for the 900. What's my tens place? 90, right? What's my ones place again? For 2. How would I say 1992 for my birth year? Let's make that blue again. It would be 1,000, so it's just 1000. It would be 900, so 900. My tens place for 90, 90. Y 2, right? You remember how you always put this space holder right here? You always put that Y in between the tens and the ones place. Still happening now. So that's what you would use for my full year. 1992. 1992. Always do that for your year. You guys kind of look out because you guys are all born around the 2000s. I'm assuming 5, maybe 2006. I don't know if I have any 2004 this year. But if you were born, for example, 2005, how would I end up saying 2005 in Spanish? Well, it's a 2000 in the numbers place. 2000. Don't have anything in the hundreds. Don't have anything in the tens. It's just a 5, right? 2005. That would be 2005 down there. So you guys have a couple of easier years, I would say. But especially if you have like older siblings or your parents or your grandparents or anybody else who are not a 2000s baby, the way you would say their year would be this full phrase or whatever. Like if they're born in 1983 or 70 or something, right? You would put the word 70 instead of 92. But that's how you say your years. So if you were talking about someone's birthday, so like my mom's birthday, I could say el cumpleaños, the birthday de mi mamá, for my mom, es el, so this is actually my mom's birthday, es el 3, that's my number. I'm not typing it because maybe you guys can guess it on your own. Es el 3 de mayo del año, right, of the year, 1955. Maybe you got what that date was. 1955. That would be it. So of course she's like 19 something because she's obviously not from like the 1800s, but that would be her birthday / the year. But this is kind of how you guys do dates, birthdays, important dates, holidays, anything you need to say. If you're giving out a date, always put your number first, then you put your month, and then if you do need to give the year, you kind of have this formula on how to do the years as well. hopefully that kind of helps. I know this was a longer one because we had a lot of stuff going on, but I will see you guys in class. Goodbye.